Hello everyone. Good afternoon and good evening for people in India. If you can hear me, go ahead and give me a shout out in the chat saying that you're able to hear me so we can get started. We have about 50 people here waiting for us, and let us give it a minute for other people also to join. So, can you hear me, people? Okay, fantastic. There are a couple of people who have responded that they can hear me. So let's get started. I am Kumar here. I am one of the founders of Valaxy, and I take care of most of the AWS related stuff in Valaxy. And people who are familiar or following this channel for quite some time might notice that most of my videos from AWS are from my voice. And I specialize in this field and I've been doing this for almost 16 plus years now. So, what I thought was let me share some of my real time experiences in architecting or solutioning in AWS and some of the best practices that I have found out so far. And to do this, we created a form some time back, and then we asked some of you to fill the form with the questions that you might be coming across or you might have in your projects. So some of you went ahead and filled it, and some of you had filled it with one-line questions or one-word questions. So we had to cut down on the noise and then focus on the real questions that we are interested in discussing. So in the first part of the session, what I will do is I will go ahead and answer some of those questions that we have qualified and verified, which will be useful for most of the people. And in the meantime, if there are more questions coming up or if we still have some time in the stream, then I will answer or try to engage with your audience on the chat window and give some answers. So before going ahead, to set some context, um, quite often me and Shankar get this question, can we do this training, can we do that training? So I'll reiterate once again, we are not a training company, we are not focused on training, we are not interested also in training. So please do not waste your time writing an email to us or writing a comment, because that is not something we are going to focus on. We are more focused on strategic consulting, and if you have any real-time issues or projects, then we can come and help you with that. And so let's get started. So one of the interesting questions that I keep hearing is backups. And when it comes to backups, what is the type of backup that we should take? This is one of the fundamental questions. And should we take an AMI backup, or should we take an snapshot backups, or should we take both of them? So what type of backup is ideal for or any given scenario? So as with many situations in AWS or architecting, there is not a one simple answer here. For example, if you have an three-tier architecture and you want to take a backup, then you would want to take up web systems or servers separately as an backup, and then your assets will be in your S3 buckets, or you might store them in EBS volumes. Then you will take a snapshot backup. But remember, AWS also has a feature called as backups. If I take you to my browser window, let me see if I get my screen correctly. So AWS has a feature called as AWS backups, and using that feature, you can take a VM backup also today. So that will take your AMIs and also your EBS volumes. You can schedule them with the cron jobs, or you can target them based on tags, or you can even do a cleanup also regularly. So there are different flexible mechanisms. So if you're looking at backup, I will expect you to start seeing this service as a primary focus for your backups. If this is not satisfying, then I will look at the AWS marketplace to see which backups are working out. If none of them is working out, then go ahead and write your own Lambda functions. So I would not go ahead and recommend you to start doing Lambda functions as the best source of your backups in the first beginning itself. So that is about backups in my opinion. So AWS backup, then your marketplace backups like a VM or any other third-party solution. Then finally comes your Lambda-based backups, and after that only you decide whether you want an incremental backup. Because there was a question in the form which asked, how do I take an incremental backup? Fundamentally in AWS, when you're taking an EBS backup, after the first snapshot, everything else is going to be an incremental snapshot. So by default, AWS offers you that feature of incremental snapshot, so you don't have to do anything specific or different there. So incremental snapshots given for you, and anytime you restore it, you'll get a point in time restore. So, and another question that does come up quite often here is, do we need any certifications? Or certifications are useful, certifications are how to prepare for them? All those kind of questions also we are getting. Well, in my opinion, yes and no. Certifications are helpful because it validates you, it puts you in front row setter position if you're looking for a job or a particular position. But does it guarantee you success? I don't think so, because certification is just one part of the equation. You need to have practice, hands-on knowledge and expertise in doing that. So, and again, there are multiple certifications. You need to choose the right one. So not all certifications are useful, not all certifications are applicable for everybody. For example, if you are interested in going and specializing in a database, today you also have a database specialty backup certificate in AWS. Or if you're specializing in security, you can go ahead and take a specialty certificate in security also. So you choose which certificate you want, which domain you want to specialize, and go ahead and do that. So that is on the backup. So we slightly touched upon the incremental backups also. RDS allows you for incremental backups. EBS allows you for incremental backups, and there are service level backups available for DynamoDB also. So go and check out the service page for backups. So another crowd favorite question when we are trying to run containers on AWS. This question keeps coming up when I'm talking to my customers. There is not one easy answer here when you are talking about the containers on AWS. There are multiple options when you are talking about running containers on AWS. So starting with, you can run ECS with EC2 instances or even Fargate, or you can run it as Kubernetes containers also. Or when you say Kubernetes, Amazon offers you managed Kubernetes, or you can also go ahead and run it in the Fargate mode. Or if you want to run it your own Kubernetes, then you can run Kubernetes on EC2 also. Whereas most often in the channel, what we have seen is that people are starting on the extreme right hand side, that is running Kubernetes on EC2. It works fantastically, nothing wrong with that. But one disadvantage with this method, or one thing that I would highly recommend not doing here, is you are going to manage the master nodes, you are going to manage the worker nodes, you are not going to keep them updated with the latest operating system patches and keep them highly available. Or if they are not being used, then you need to do some downsizing of those worker nodes. So all this additional heavy lifting that you need to do if you're going to run your Kubernetes on EC2. Having said that, it is not uncommon for people or clients to run this, but those teams are, in my opinion, spending time on managing the Kubernetes cluster itself. But when you're running on, let us say, EKS, you have today a managed worker node option where your worker nodes are automatically managed by Amazon itself. So you just manage your master nodes and then your pods and everything. But the worker node management, like service updates or maintaining high availability, all those things are taken care by AWS itself. And if you don't want to run it on EC2, then EKS also today offers a Fargate mode where you don't have any containers at all. So that is my favorite option of running containers in AWS, running EKS or even EC2 with Fargate mode, where your tasks are running, and when your tasks are not running or pods are not running, you're not going to pay any money to Amazon. So that is the best way, in my opinion, to run containers in AWS. And there is a lot of monitoring solutions available when you're talking about containers, and it again depends on what type of team that you are working on, what type of application that you are working on. So if your application is throwing a lot of logs on stdio, then you can use the simple AWS driver and push the logs information to CloudWatch and create a dashboard. Or if you are having some third-party solution like a logs.io or Splunk or Elasticsearch, then you can attach a sidecar container to your container pods and push that logging information and create your own dashboards anywhere outside also. It does not, I mean, you can swap one out of the other. Once you take the logs from the container, you can send it to CloudWatch or Logsdash or anything for your monitoring and dashboarding features. So there is multiple ways of doing it. So you need to talk to your application teams or your application owners or your business owners to see what kind of visibility they want into your container ecosystem. So there is multiple ways of achieving it. So if you're learning first time Kubernetes, so in my opinion, go ahead and start with Fargate. If you're comfortable with Fargate, then you go ahead and start digging your hands into Kubernetes on EC2, and then you try to manage it. So while talking about this, there is a question of Dynatrace. As I said, it depends. If you want to pay license fees and everything, manage another Dynatrace instance, then go ahead and use it. There's nothing wrong in that. In my opinion, I am a big fan of AWS. So if it is not possible or if it is not workable with CloudWatch, then I would go ahead and choose whichever third-party solution or marketplace solution that meets your demands. Whether it can be Dynatrace or a New Relic, or it can be Logs.io or any other third-party solution. So I'm not saying this is one is better than the other. You need to choose what you need for your workload, and then for your business, and then choose them. And all of them have their own benefits and disadvantages also. So that is on the different type of containers, or what type of containers you want to run. Let us say you have decided on Kubernetes is the container orchestration that you want to choose and you want to run. So the next question becomes, what kind of library that you want to use for running your containers. So there are two different ways when you're running in a Kubernetes. One is the Kops or a kubectl, and the question comes is which is the best library for Kubernetes on AWS, which one you want to run. Again, it depends on your team. kubectl is having a lot of native binaries for running it in EKS. So if you're going to look at Kubernetes with EKS, then I would lean towards a kubectl. But if your team is already having a lot of tools and scripting and knowledge built on top of Kops, then go ahead and use Kops itself. There's nothing wrong with it. But only thing is you will have to do some monkeying around to patching so that Kops will talk to AWS APIs. But a kubectl has a lot of plugins for AWS APIs directly, and you can call those commands directly. So there's a trade-off which is your team comfortable with, and you need to choose it that way. So again, there is another product that was recently launched by Amazon. It is called as CDK for Kubernetes, CDK 8s. Let me see if I can pull up that GitHub page. So what this does is you can generate Kubernetes YAML files using your programming languages. You don't need Kops or kubectl, so you can use it directly from your Python or Node.js libraries, and then your YAML file for Kubernetes is created, and with that you can deploy your Kubernetes clusters and manage your Kubernetes clusters. So it's pretty powerful. Let me see if I have got the page correctly. If not, I will put the link later. So let us move on to the next question, which is talking about application monitoring. And there was a question in the team which asked about how to monitor heap size or a memory failure in my Java applications. Or how, in other words, I have some application which is throwing some errors, and how do I monitor it? The, again, if your application is running on EC2, then what you can do is we have something called as an CloudWatch agent. You can use that agent and configure it to pick up the application logs and send it to CloudWatch. So once it is in CloudWatch, you have something called as custom metric filters, and you can use those custom metric filters and create some alarms for your heap size. Let us say whenever the heap size is growing into 80% of the heap volume, heap size configured, then you keep on monitoring it, and your application can notify CloudWatch saying there is a heap size is growing. Then I want an alarm to be triggered, so that the alarm will set up some Lambda function so that the heap size is reset or increased even more. So that is one way of doing it. Cluster, basically you are using CloudWatch agent and then custom namespace and metric filters. By using this combination, you should be able to do application monitoring natively in AWS. If a native solution is not good enough for you, then you can go ahead and use any third-party agents, like for example Logic Monitor is something that comes to my mind, which also gives you an agent, or you can have any Splunk based agent also, which can pick up the log files and send it to the monitoring system, and you can process the logs in your monitoring system to get some alerts. So that is one way of doing application monitoring in AWS. So there is another question. This is depending upon which level of your career you are in AWS. This question, you might have faced this question already, or you might face this depending upon your organization. So application migration, where to begin? This is quite a big topic. There is no simple answer to it. Let us say if you are working for an enterprise, not a small startup or not a small company. Then in that case you will have many applications in your enterprise, maybe 10, maybe 100, maybe thousands. So then you need to understand how many applications are there. Basically this is called as an assessment. You assess what applications you have in your organization. Then you identify potential candidates that you can migrate to the cloud. So you do an assessment, and then you do analysis, and then you create a plan. So this is the sequence of steps at a very, very high level. So when we are talking about application assessment and then analysis, it comes to the final stage of data migration. How do I migrate my data from on-premise to the cloud? Do Amazon provide any tools for that? So there are two, let us talk about database data migration. That is quite the tricky part of it. So when you're particularly talking about database data migration, then you have something called as DMS. Let me see if I can pull up the service page. So this is the service that I am talking about here, AWS Data Migration Service. By this, what you can do is you can configure your AWS database like RDS from on-premise, so you can constantly synchronize your data from your on-premise Oracle or a MySQL or some other database which is compatible with RDS. Then you can constantly push data from on-premise to the cloud. So that is also possible. If you want to do it in an EC2 also, that is also possible. RDS is nothing but running EC2 on top of SQL, but you don't have to manage your EC2 instances when you're running RDS itself. Amazon takes care of the underlying EC2 instances. So that is why I prefer running an RDS instance rather than running an EC2 and Oracle separately or SQL separately. That is one way of migrating your data. And in addition to this one, there is something called as a schema conversion tool. Here it is. You can see here after the next to the overview tab, and next to this you can have the schema conversion tool. in case if you have an non-homogeneous migration, for example, you from Oracle you are moving to Amazon Aurora, then you need to see whether the schemas are compatible or not. So you can run this tool to find out whether the schemas are matching. If there is not matching, or if there is an incompatibility, the schema conversion tool is going to identify it and highlight it, so you can take some remedial actions and then you can migrate your data. So that is one way of migrating the data. Then if you have something like an object storage or a lot of files, let us say you are having an file system storage, then you can use S3 import. You can upload it to an S3 bucket and then you can use it in your applications, or you can even get a snowball sent to your location, upload the data into your snowball and import it into your account. So those are the different ways you can move data from your on-premise data centers or your other client locations into the AWS cloud. So these are all possible. Then you can then of course if the amount of data is small, then you just set up a VPN connection and push it through your VPN also. That is also possible. So quickly, I'm just checking on the chat window. There are a couple of questions. Which one of the question was whether RDS is better or which way to migrate on-prem. That's what we just now discussed it. And then another question is on whether should I learn Kubernetes or AWS services like EKS. My opinion is if you need to. Hybrid cloud is, in my opinion, is still maturing or still is in early stages. So that means that you are going to focus on one particular cloud, either it is AWS or Azure or GCP. So in that case, if your choice of cloud is like AWS, then I would say start with EKS. Once you are comfortable with EKS, then you go ahead and start learning Kubernetes natively by launching EC2 instances, because there is not much benefit today, in my opinion, by clicking on a few buttons on the screen and learning how to launch multiple EC2 instances to run a master node and another set of multiple instances for running your worker nodes in Kubernetes. All these things are done very, very simply. A cluster is created in just 2 minutes for you if you're going to run an EKS mode. So going back to our questions here, there was another interesting question about SNS Topic Management. This was, in my opinion, pretty silly. Somebody has created a topic and then they have sent out a lot of invites to potential subscribers, and some of those invitations have not been subscribed, so they are in expired state. So if you go to the console, this is somebody who likes to visually see them and take remedial action. But if you have millions of subscribers, you would not be worried about it. But if you are having 3 or 4 subscribers and then some of them are in expired state or some of them is visually unappealing to you and you want to remove them, then by default it is not possible to remove them. But after 3 days it gets expired, the link, then automatically Amazon removes it after a certain period of time. So you don't have to remove them, you don't have to worry about them being visible on your console. So I wouldn't be really worried about topic management and the subscriber management unless it's just for test purposes that you are doing it, because in real world scenarios you will have hundreds and thousands of subscribers to each of the topics, at least especially if you're running a mobile app or those kind of environments, or if there is a support team, at least there will be like a 10 or 15 subscribers. So you're not going to focus on managing individual subscribers one by one and be worried about some topics not being subscribed or being in expired state. So there is a question which says, so for migration, which services we can recommend in AWS? So when talking about a server migration, we have a service called as server migration service. It is called as SMS. And using SMS, and there is another service or another company Amazon recently acquired, which is called as Cloud Endure. So using Cloud Endure, what you can do is you can configure your VMs to be automatically migrated from your on-premise to the cloud. For example, if you're running VMware and Let us get my screen corrected. If you're running VMware, you can configure Cloud Endure, and Cloud Endure can pick up the VM configurations from VMware and provide the necessary resources in AWS and copy the AMI or create the VMT package it, send it to AWS, create the AMI and launch the VM. So the applications or VMs from on-premise to the cloud. And the best part is there is an map program is also available, migration acceleration program, where you can do and portfolio analysis, application discovery, and all those things, and then you can create a plan for how many applications should be migrated on which date and what should be the downtime for that particular application when it goes live, all those cutovers and approval process. So it's all smooth and streamlined by using those two platforms. So migrating from RDS to Aurora SQL servers, is it suggestible? Rupa, that is a very interesting question. Depends upon what is going to be your use case. Let us say you are going to have a long running SQL queries. Then you need to see how much is the compute capacity that you will be needing for each of those queries. Then you need to do a cost calculation to see your existing RDS instance is good enough to manage those long running queries, or if you are going to have a lot of short running queries, then how much it is going to be costing. So basically I will look at those two parameters, because the only difference is cost here, because otherwise Amazon takes care of the management of the servers when it is running in RDS mode. So I will look at the queries and how long it takes and what is the compute for each of those queries, and then compare the cost, and then I will make a decision. Without those parameters, it is not recommended to go one way or the other. And whatever the case, I would never go for on-prem personally. Today, running anything on-prem seems counterintuitive for me, unless there is a very high low latency requirement for the workloads. Even if you have low latency, Amazon is coming up with something called as Outposts, which is like an stack that you can deploy in your own data centers and connect it to the cloud and manage it with the same APIs and same GUIs that you're familiar with. So there is another again crowd favorite question, which is quite often comes up, which is should I know scripting? Should I know programming languages? Which programming languages to choose? Me and Shankar have quite a lot of discussions on this topic. My personal opinion, this is highly opinionated view, as it is never too late to learn scripting. It is never too late to know or learn a programming language. If you are not known, then you can go ahead and learn it anytime, whether it is a bash shell scripting, or whether it is a Python or a Ruby, or if you're familiar, or if you're just starting out new, I don't mind starting out with something like Node.js or TypeScript, because the power of these scripting languages are today you can write cloud automation or provisioning code directly in those programming languages. It is called as a cloud development kit, AWS CDK. Using CDK, you can write CloudFormation templates and deploy your resources directly. So you are not sitting and configuring in the AWS console, making some mistakes, or if you are writing in CloudFormation code, you're not worried about it. So learn a programming language basically, and everything else becomes easy, whether it is application code or provisioning code. Everything becomes really, really easy in my opinion. So it's never too late to start on that. So I'm just going to quickly pick up the Cloud Endure page so that I can show you that one also. So here I'm showing you the Cloud Endure migration page. This is the software that I'm talking about, migrating your workloads to the cloud, and it natively integrates with your existing applications like VMware. And you can see here this includes Windows Server migrations also, that you can do that. You can CentOS, you can do RHEL or Oracle Enterprise Linux or SUSE. And this is the Cloud Endure product page. You can go ahead and test it out also freely in your own account and your own free time. Very, very powerful tool. go ahead and try it. So there is another question about products and pricing. There is, in my opinion, AWS pricing is quite transparent because you have this AWS simple monthly calculator. So any product that you take, you can go ahead and simply check out the pricing yourself. There is nothing fancy here. You can just try it out anytime you want, whichever service. So I'm trying to pull up the product page here, and most of the times what I do is I just go ahead and Google the link, and then I pick up the prices here. So what I'm showing right now is the AWS pricing calculator. You can go ahead and create an estimate for any service you want. Let us say you want to do for S3, you can just go ahead and choose Amazon Simple Storage Service, and then go ahead and configure it, how much data you are sending, how long you want to store, and what will be your transfer rate, and all those things. Once you fill in, you can get an estimate of that product and how much you will be charged every month. So it's pretty much simple, this pricing calculator, and almost all the services are listed here. You just need to go ahead and play around with the service to find out what is going to be the cost for a particular service. So there is a question on how can I deploy a dynamic website using Lambda. So this is when you are talking about a dynamic website, first of all, we need a place to host our website. That means that you will need either S3 or CloudFront in front of it, not or. You will need a CloudFront to have certificates. So that is for the static part of it. If you want to run some server-side rendering, then you will need a Lambda function either running at the cloud at edge, or your client-side code is triggering the Lambda function, and then that Lambda will trigger that server-side rendering and push it back to the CloudFront. So that is how you would run a dynamic website with AWS. So moving forward on the questions part. So there was another very interesting question in the form that we had received earlier, which was somebody was trying to build using CodeBuild service and trying to enable SSHD and xinetd. In my opinion, no, you should not be doing them at all, because that means that you're trying to connect to the internet and trying to shell into another service, either to pick up a file or starting a service. But basically, CodeBuild is for creating your artifacts, not deploying it. You need to see what you're using for CodeBuild. So definitely, if I am doing this, I would say there is something going wrong here. So do not do this. There is a question on what is the best solution for hosting a static website. Depends on what you want to do, in my opinion. If your static website is not going to do anything fancy, or it is just a blog, then I would host it in S3. As simple as that. The audience on make more demonstrations of real-time project scenarios, or make more share those questions. So we have done that already. We have a playlist which is dedicated for real-time project scenarios. Each of those 50 videos that you see here, or 50 demonstrations that you see here, are based on some of the expertise that me and Shankar and a few other people have experienced in their working life. And then we try to package them into simple question answer, or a problem and a solution format. So that is what this entire playlist is all about. So anybody who is looking to make up their career in AWS, or looking to move from beginner level to an expert level, I would say go ahead and try these demonstrations, each and every one of them, and see how you can improve them, or what better solution that you can come up with for the same scenario. Because when some of these videos were made, some services were unavailable, or some services had some limitations. For example, with the VPC edge routing or multi-VPC pairing was a big problem until 2 years ago. But with the introduction of a transit gateway, that is another service that is Amazon has announced, you can do multi-VPC pairing today. You can even do edge routing with transit gateway. So go ahead and try the different scenarios and see how you can solve those problems. Even today, the transit gateway will not be the ideal solution. For example, for a site to be there, some customers might not choose that because of cost or because of the complexity of the solution. So you need to see how you are going to propose the solutions for your customers based on the given scenario. So as I was talking, the same thing that I see on the chat also, please make more videos on real-time scenarios. So that is exactly what I'm showing right now, or sharing with everybody. There is already enough content, in my opinion, on this channel. And in addition to this, what I want to share here is there is an entire GitHub repo dedicated for real-time use cases. So in this repository, what me and a few other people, there are like 4 or 5 contributors, each of them having 5 to 10 years of experience, and almost 3 4 years in AWS. What they have done is they have shared some of their real world experiences here. For example, you can see the very first one, or let me pick up a simple one. Say, for example, this CloudFront drift detection, for example. So basically what this means is there is a problem scenario given, and it is asking you what is going to be your next steps. So you can go ahead and try and answer this. If you see an answer, you can go ahead and send me a pull request. I will merge the in this repository so everybody can learn. So basically when you say 300, this is a level 300 level question. So you need to understand how CloudFormation works, how different people are using CloudFormation, and then you go ahead and try to solve this problem. So if you're at a beginner level, there are 100 level questions also, or 100 level scenarios also that you can see here. There's the level 100 and then level 200, and then once you graduate, there are some 400 level questions. And if you're into augmented reality or virtual reality also, there are some segments for AR and VR as well. So, and this is not just only me and few other people, even you also can contribute your questions here. So once I review them, once I validate the questions are good enough to be published here and it is well written, then we can go ahead and add them. So all of them were updated recently so that it conforms with the quality standards that we are maintaining. Go ahead and try this. So you have the playlist, which is having a lot of real-time issues and scenarios, and you also have a GitHub repo with all the real-time scenarios. I'm just putting this link into the chat window so that you can also go ahead and use them. And let me see if I can put the playlist URL also into the chat so that you can make a note of that. So there is another question from another person here. We have faced more load on RDS and we ended up upgrading our server database is fine, but now EB scaling the instance at maximum with the network throughput are related. Please discuss the load issues. I'm not sure I understand the question. Basically, it appears like you are having network throttling issues. Amazon has a high network throughput instances, which goes all the way up to 1 gigabit per second on the ENIs. So if you are choosing those instances for talking to your database, then you will not have those network congestion or issues on your database side. So without more context, it is very difficult to recommend the best solution there. So let me see if I can pick up a few more questions that are in the chat here. So there is another question on CloudFormation. We do already have fantastic videos on CloudFormation. So another feature that I want to introduce all of you guys here is if you go to our channel and there is a search option here right under the YouTube Studio option. So under the search, if you are, let us say you're looking for CloudFormation and a particular video and you search for it, and if you are interested in our channel, so if I search for CloudFormation, you can see the very first video has about 23,000 hits. So you can go ahead and choose whichever video that you want and check it out. So we have enough content on when you are talking about CloudFormation. So try it out. If something is missing, then explicitly write it out saying this is what is missing in this video and this is what we are looking for. So another question is, when migrating end of service Windows servers on AWS to get extended security, can we get it for free or additional cost? First of all, do not bring your technical debt from on-premise to the cloud. If you have an old Windows machines or Windows operating system running on your on-premises, when you're moving to the cloud, use that opportunity to move to the latest flavor of the operating system, so that your difficulties are reduced. But for some unfortunate reasons, you need to bring the old end of license Windows servers. You need to check whether that is first of all supported. Assuming it is supported, then Amazon has no liability or responsibility towards what operating system, what licensing you are bringing in. So if you bring a old license, then you are fully responsible for managing it, maintaining it, and running it in the AWS cloud, because you are only running an EC2 instance. If you are using the Amazon built-in EC2 with the licenses, then they will provide you the licenses and extended updates as long as Microsoft supports it. So what is the best database, MySQL or RDS? What is the application that is going to access the database? For example, I have written quite a few applications myself. For Valaxy also, we use a lot of applications on the back end. And nowadays, I find myself using DynamoDB very often. The amount of times that I even think of running SQL database is very less. So unless there is a specific use case, long running queries or join queries or multiple queries, I am not going to run an SQL database. I would first choose an NoSQL database like DynamoDB, and if that is not the case, then I would go ahead and choose a SQL database that my application requires, because by the time I go to a SQL database, that means that my application has specific requirements, and that application specific requirements will most probably put me into some site, either it is RDS or Aurora or even Postgres, then maybe Oracle. So how can we stop total ECS cluster automatically every day to save cost? And fantastic question. Run it on Fargate. Simple as that. Because when you're running it on Fargate, you are going to be charged only for the time that your cluster tasks are running. So when your tasks are stopped, automatically your cost also comes down. So you're not worried about cost management by automatically starting and stopping your EC2 instances. So Fargate is ideal for those kind of scenarios. If that is not possible, then go ahead and run your ECS clusters on spot instances to reduce your cost. If you cannot run it on spot instances and for some reason you are decided to running your ECS clusters on EC2, then you can run some auto scaling policies which can have scheduled scaling up and scaling down scaling rules. That's what I was looking for. So that is another way. So start with Fargate, then spot instances, then use some auto scaling scheduled scaling rules, which can be triggered by cron jobs in scheduled events. So let me see any other interesting question is there. And by the way, I am not going to pick up any question that you can go ahead and easily Google it or other people have solved it, because we don't want to try and replace Google. If there is a basic information that you can be easily found out by Googling, then go ahead and do that and help yourself. We are not going to pick up those questions here. So I'm just going to quickly go through your chat here. There is a if any interesting question that might be helpful for all the people here. what is the best solution for EKS or ECS? I think you missed my discussion initially when I talked about cluster management. Tell me your application workload, then I will tell you which cluster management software is the best. So when you're beginning as a learner, I understand quite often the question comes, which one should I learn, ECS or EKS? So always I recommend to look at the things in this way. It is always business, and from business you will run some applications to manage those business. For running those applications, then you will use the technology piece. So if you are having an microservices, then I can easily run those microservices as Lambda function also. I don't need an container orchestration platform. Suppose I want to run my applications as containers, then I am thinking of a container orchestration. Maybe Fargate will be the easiest solution, because ultimately we all want to run business, not manage operating systems, not manage infrastructure. So in that case, ECS, EKS all depends upon what type of application you want to run. Oh, that is a very interesting question. Whenever the word CDK comes in, I get really excited. Because I learned CloudFormation in a very difficult way a few years ago, and I also get really pissed off when there's a comma missing or a bracket missing when you're writing it in JSON, or if a single space is missing in YAML or some syntax is wrong. So CloudFormation screws me up quite often. So lately I find myself using CDK regularly, and I write almost all my infrastructure provisioning code today with CDK. Unless it is not possible with the CDK, or unless the CDK libraries are not mature or it is experimental, I don't go to CloudFormation at all. So CDK is the first choice. If CDK is not there, then go with CloudFormation. And I personally prefer JSON, so I start writing it in JSON. So somebody wants to run Jenkins redundantly without becoming down. I would say go ahead and run it with code commit, code build, and code deploy. That is what Jenkins redundantly becoming going down means. So what is a real-time scenario use case for network load balancer? Well, think about streaming workloads. How do you stream workloads? I'm not going to answer that question in detail. It is a very interesting question. You can go ahead and Google that. But think about I want to send a traffic in port 99 or port 43, for example. How do you do that? So if you have an application with a particular specific port, and if you want to do some UDP streaming or push some updates with the UDP protocol, not a TCP, not HTTPS, then you are looking at network load balancers or a different type of load balancing now. As I was saying some time back, if you are talking about the AWS CDK is native code. That is, for example, you have Python support, Java support, Node.js support, and JavaScript support. That means that if you are a programmer with knowledge on any of these languages already, then you can start writing CloudFormation or infrastructure using a CDK directly. You don't have to learn anything, because it is basically class objects. You can instantiate any class objects, or you can create your own class objects and write your Terraform, AWS code. But with Terraform, you are completely learning another syntax, which is different from any programming languages. So in my opinion, CDK trumps Terraform, and CDK is fully supported by AWS. It comes from AWS stable itself, so you can expect the same level of support that CloudFormation gets. Whereas Terraform has to be always be catching up with AWS. Whenever a new service comes, then the CloudFormation support comes, then Terraform has to go ahead and support the new service, whereas the CDK will come natively with that support built in. So that way, CDK is a blessing. But if you are looking at multi-cloud deployments or hybrid cloud deployments, then Terraform might be the tool of your choice. Again, the question is, it depends where you're specializing in your career. Anyway, we are digressing on for tooling discussions, because each teams and each company will have a different tool that is required. But go ahead and choose the tool which your company or you personally prefer. That is how I choose my tools. So that is an interesting question. How do we move infrastructure from one region to another region? Uh, Basically, you don't move the infrastructure, you just move the data, because anything like, for example, an EC2 instance, you can start it in another region. So you just need the data. So we are talking about moving the data itself. You have a lot of functionality. For example, S3 has cross-region replication. You have DynamoDB global tables and a few other services which are global in scope. So basically, you can keep on synchronizing your data. For example, RDS, if you take a snapshot, you can copy them across regions. Likewise, EBS and AMIs also can be copied across. So once you have those data copied, whether it is AMIs or snapshots or database backups, then you launch your CloudFormation template, which will bring up those resources and use those data that has been copied from one region to another region. So there is another question on the amount of load that when we deploy by routing by some of old users. I'm not sure I understand the question. Mr. Manikanta Reddy, you need to retype your question, because I'm not able to follow your thought process there. So how do you recover container data if container is deleted? Basically, containers are ephemeral in nature. Some containers can run for a second or 10 seconds or 1 hour, 2 hours. So basically, you should not write your application code which stores data inside the container. Always it should be talking to a database. So irrespective of the life cycle of the container, your data will be persisting outside the container. Yes, you can auto scale your database. There is horizontal scaling is very easy. By an API call, you can create read replicas. Vertical scaling, you can do that by increasing by instance sizes. So it depends upon what you mean by scaling your database. Mr. Ashish Sharma, what is your second? I am not able to understand your second part of the question. Upcoming project is in Java microservices and migrating to AWS. Can you please elaborate on that? I'm just going to scroll up to see if we have missed out any other interesting questions. So there is a question on ELK monitoring tool purpose. Okay, your question itself is answers what you're looking for. ELK is a monitoring tool, so depends upon what you are trying to monitor there. So for solution architect, what services is a must need to learn? You will be able to suggest as much as you can learn. That is what my suggestion is. If let us say you learned EC2, then learn S3. If you learned S3, go and learn RDS. If you learned RDS, go ahead and learn load balancers and VPCs and networking. If you've done RDS load balancers, then go ahead and learn Route 53. Once Route 53 is done, go ahead and learn IAM. If IAM is done, go ahead and learn CloudWatch. If CloudWatch is done, go ahead and learn Lambda. If Lambda is done, go ahead and learn something like recognition service. So there is when you are an architect, there is no limitation saying your client will not say that, hey, he knows only two services, let me go and talk to somebody else. He just talks to an architect and he expects the architect to know about the services. And there is no limitation saying, I will learn five services and I will be done with it. So looks like we have a lot of entry level, beginner level questions. I'm going to ignore them. If there is any real time questions or anything that you are facing in your work life experience, then I'm happy to discuss them. For a solutions architect, is must to know multi-cloud or two to cloud is enough? Yes and no. As I said in the beginning or some time back, the whole multi-cloud or hybrid cloud strategy is evolving. The number of customers that will be using multiple clouds effectively is very, very less. Today, whoever says they are using multi-cloud will have like 60 to 70% of their workloads in cloud A, and they will be just experimenting or trying to understand what is the other cloud for 20 to 30% of their time. So that is not an ideal multi-cloud strategy. Whenever, because the way you use two services will be completely different. In Amazon, what we call it is an least common denominator. Like, for example, in Amazon, encryption is integrated with almost 70 plus services, whereas if you go to Azure, it is integrated with only about 10 to 15 services or much lesser. So if you are trying to use encryption, then if you want to have an application which is running on both the places, then you can use only those 20 integrated services, because encryption is not supported on other services. So that means that the feature set that you can use in any cloud is completely limited, because you are trying to use a multi-cloud strategy. So the reason I'm explaining all this is that strategy is quite evolving. As of now, it is good enough if you have very, very deep expertise in one cloud. But in a few years down the line, maybe 3 or 4 years or 5 years down the line, you might be expected to know more than one cloud. But that is not today. That is my opinion, by the way. Again, there are many opinions out there, but this is, I strongly believe in that as of now, there is only one cloud that is going to have, either it is Azure or Google or AWS or GCP in any organization, then there will be a secondary cloud. So how do we do IAM access rotation? Well, you write a Lambda function and then you pick up the old keys and then you rotate them and notify the users. A graceful shutdown? That doesn't make any sense. Is it possible to auto rotate the keys from SSM parameter store? How can we do that? I think instead of using SSM parameter store, ideally you can use AWS secrets manager, because it comes with built-in Lambda functions for rotating the keys and updating those passwords. For example, let us say you're talking about RDS passwords that are being stored in secrets manager. So your database needs to be updated with the latest password. Once the database secret is rotated, then the Lambda function is provided for you natively, and you can go ahead and try that out. So if you're talking about some other secrets, then you can use a custom Lambda function to update it. So it is possible to use SSM parameter store and Lambda functions to rotate it. But only thing is, when you start writing this automation, then you need to monitor whether the automation is working or not. For example, if your Lambda function is not triggered after 30 days or 40 days of rotation, or if it is failing to rotate it, then you need an alarm, and that alarm needs to notify somebody, and that person has to troubleshoot it. Whereas when you use a secrets manager, the rotation functionality is built into the service itself. So if it fails, Amazon retries and then keeps retrying, and then they send you a notification if it's failing automatically. So all the management effort is taken care for you automatically. Oh, Ashish Sharma, I don't. That's a very interesting question. You have, you can use either, depending upon if it's a mobile service, I would use Cognito. If it is not a mobile service, then you can use a web identity federation with an identity provider with the backend as an OpenID or OAuth provider. you do have identity federated services available in IAM. So this question has come up twice, so I will try to read it, although I don't think this is a valid question. How can an EKS pod can connect with EMR and running Hadoop jobs? Basically, what you're trying to say is, or trying to ask me is, you have an Hadoop job running in EMR, and then you're trying to connect to an EKS pod, or your EKS pod is triggering the Hadoop job. I am not able to understand which is the flow here. As long as they are in the same networking space, it should not be possible. You can use your hosted zone to have a DNS based routing, and they should be able to connect. You don't need an VPC peering or anything like that, or VPC connects. So you use your pod networking service discovery basically, and then using the service discovery you will find out the EMR APIs, and then you will send your request there. But having said that, I would say that architecture is badly designed. I would rather run a glue job, which will trigger my Spark clusters on the back end, and then run my Hadoop jobs in a Spark cluster in glue, rather than running it in EKS. Mr. Jaffer Sheikh, you have written the question a couple of times how the data is migrated, and I've seen this question a couple of times earlier. Earlier today in this live streaming, we spoke about a couple of services, SMS, and then Cloud Endure, and Cloud Import, VM Import Export, and then Snowmobile. Go ahead and check it out when this video is published. Could you please create a video on IAM Lambda functions? We already have that service. Let me see if I can. IAM, I'm just going to search it. IAM access key rotation. So we already have published it, and you can go ahead and use them if you want. This Lambda function identifies the old keys and sends you an SNS notification, or some kind of a report it sends. You can use that report to modify it, because it is usually the platform teams and the teams who are using the keys are different. So you cannot go ahead and disable an existing key without knowing where the keys are being used. So that is the reason I have not written the Lambda rotation also. As you can see here on the screen, the very first Lambda function is IAM access key rotation. Go ahead and check it out. So as I said, the search functionality within our channel is quite powerful. If you are looking for a particular video, go ahead and try them, put a search query, and then see if that video is there. Most probably it is there, because we have covered most of the entry level, beginner level videos already. That is why we wanted to move on from entry level and real life scenarios. So I'll take one or two more questions before we wind up for this week. So for next week, what we will do is we will have a more specialized interview from an engineer, if possible. We will do an interview with an engineer who is working in AWS DevOps and other clouds, and we will share his or her experience with you guys. If that is not possible, we will publish a piece of an recorded of that interview, and then either me or Shankar will have a session in the next live streaming, talking about some of the projects that we are doing, or some of the issues that people are facing in some of the videos or demonstrations that we have done. So the last question, let us see what is the other interesting question. I want you to serve instant on-demand instances along with the auto scaling. Yes, today you can run an hybrid cluster with different types of instances. That is possible. Yes, you can run that. We have some Airflow jobs which are running in EC2, which execute some Hadoop jobs using EMR. We are planning to migrate from EC2 to EKS. Here a job will run as a pod. Fantastic, not a problem at all. So moving from EC2 to EKS is not a problem, but why would EKS want to access EMR is a question. And why not a glue job is the question. because Glue is a much more scalable service just for dedicated ETL jobs. Yes, Mr. Mohammed Abdul Sattar, we are trying to plan and live streaming session every week, and we are trying to attract more and more experienced people and people working in the cloud and who are already having expertise. As I said in the beginning, we are not trying to focus on entry level trainings. Trainings is not the primary focus. Sharing the experience, sharing the expertise. If we are doing something not right, then we can learn from you people, and you people also can learn few things from us. So that is what we are trying to do. And with that, I will close up on today's session. And do not forget that if you have any other questions, go ahead and put them in the Excel sheet that we shared earlier. So the next week we will pick up that sheet and then answer some questions from there. So if and sometimes I see people putting in one line questions or one word questions. Please do spend time and respect our times also. We don't want to have any silly questions. We all have limited times and limited lives, so we will have a productive session. I'm going to put the URL in the chat window so that you can share it with your friends who might also have those queries or other scenarios that they might want to get answered. It can be either in AWS, or it can be in DevOps, it can be architecting, or it can be solutioning, and we all can learn from each other. So I think this is the URL. So finally, some bit of self promotion. Me and Shankar have put out a lot of effort in creating a couple of courses in Skillshare and Udemy, and those courses are available in the description of this video and also in the About Us page of our channel. Go ahead and check out them, and if you're interested in it and like it, go ahead and leave us a comment. Thank you very much. See you in the next live stream.